Hello and welcome to another episode of Charles' Weekly Parti. I'm Charles, your host, and all I can say so far is that it's been an interesting week with tech. Lots going on, but before I get started on that, let's roll the intro. All right. So this week when I was putting everything together, the way I usually do things, ironically, is actually the opposite order in which I talk about them. So generally speaking, I do my technology research first, and then I do the architecture research. And sometimes that works out just fine. Other times, there are always times where I switch around the orders of things. But this week, something became apparent as I was doing my research on what happened in tech this week. So as I was doing the research, adding things onto my notes, before I even got to thinking about an architecture pick for the week, I had about 3 pages of notes. And I can say from past experience that 3 pages worth of notes means I'm going to have a lot to talk about. And that means that the episode is already getting closer to the hour-long side instead of the shorter end of things. So I decided that this week I'm just going to be sticking to tech. It's not a decision I make lightly because I do like talking about both architecture and technology, but weeks like this, sometimes there's just too much going on, too much on my mind to properly balance the episode between the two. And done it before. I don't want to rush the architecture because I know I have a lot to talk about in tech. And one of the longer episodes where that happened, I only had 2 pages of notes. And now I have 3. So it is what it is. Next week, assuming technology doesn't go kaboom again, there will be an architecture pick. But one of the things on the tech side that has caught my attention and a lot of people's attention is currently the Newegg incident. So, a little bit of backstory for you. A YouTube channel, Gamers Nexus, bought an open box motherboard for $500, and they decided that once they did the project that they were intending to use it for, realized that they didn't need it and decided to send it back for a refund. Well, when Newegg received it back, Newegg ended up citing damage to the motherboard pins, which, for lack of better words, means that the motherboard would not be able to work. And the problem with all of this is the fact that they cited damage and said, hey, we're not going to return it to you. But the kicker is that the YouTube channel did not open the box. So they returned it without touching it and got denied a refund, which brought a lot of questions into things. And I guess Newegg, knowing and to the best of my knowledge, Gamers Nexus was not shy about the fact that it was indeed them who they were working with. I guess Newegg was kind enough not to return their calls or other notifications. Enter social media. So when all else fails, take to social media, point out that Newegg has messed up, and all of a sudden, a lot of people will start paying attention, which is exactly what the case happened and led to another humorous incident where Gamers Nexus posted that evidently Newegg has been trying to call us and reach us, and we're going to tell them the same thing that they told us. Send us an email and we'll get back to you when we feel like it. So I guess before I go into my thoughts on this, I want to cover how the incident sort of ended up finishing, at least for the moment. After some back and forth, Newegg decided to not only refund them the money for the board, but to send them the board back, where they determined that the open box was previously returned and accepted, and in the most likely cases that the manufacturer said we're not going to repair this. So Newegg decided that they wanted to offload it to someone who would be able to just take care of it. And by take care of it, I mean absorb the cost loss. The scary part about this is that Gamers Nexus is far from the only ones who have run into this issue. After they posted about it, a lot of people weighed in and said that Newegg scammed them as well. So, thoughts on this are, I guess, a little bit interesting. I've bought things from Newegg before, and prior to this incident, Newegg was one of my favorite retailers to purchase technology from. But now this is a slight issue. So having motherboard pins damaged, to the best of my knowledge, that is approximately a $100 repair, which means on a cheaper motherboard it may end up just being less expensive to buy a new one, but on a $500 motherboard, fixing it would be in best interests. So the other problem here is that the retailer here in question, Newegg, was not honest about how about the whole incident with the refund. And if this is happening to someone who can easily make this an issue for the company, as we're seeing right now, they didn't take proper precautions. They didn't say, okay, we have a problematic motherboard here, we're going to have to absorb the cost because we accepted it. They decided, let's ship it out to another customer, and if they go and say, hey, this isn't working, try to return it, basically blame them for the whole incident. Which I have a problem with because, once again, happening to someone who can wreak havoc on Newegg. If they're going to do it to them, then they're going to do it to the little guy. And from my personal standpoint, and right now, actually, ironically, dealing with a power supply recall, which now I have to follow up on because I submitted a warranty claim now 2 weeks ago and haven't heard anything back. So there are some issues going on right now, and the only thought processes on it are quite simply that if you are going to go and make a consumer's life difficult, they are not going to want to work with you again. After hearing about this incident, that some other YouTube creators in the technology space weighed in on the whole incident, and one of them actually used to be an RMA person for Newegg. So if you want to get that perspective, feel free to check out a video by YouTube channel Paul's Hardware. And just looking at the basics of it, they'd go and analyze whether someone was trying to scam Newegg or just happened to get whacked with an unfortunate situation. Because from an RMA perspective, if something doesn't work, or if something looks damaged, If you deny the refund, ultimately the consumer is hurt unless they're trying to scam you, in which case that's exactly what's deserved. But if you do accept an RMA of a part that can't be sold again, you're accepting some degree of loss for the company. And the trick is figuring out whose which side to take, because one is not exactly a reason to keep you around, and the other is one makes it so that a company is less likely to want you there, but also makes the consumers happy. But the other one helps out the company, but doesn't help the consumer. And there's a balance. So obviously, if a person is trying to scam them over, like sending in a random thing that weighs enough to sort of make it seem like they're not shipping you an empty box, then yeah, that's an incident where no way you're going to side with the consumer, because the consumer is trying to cause you problems. But right now, what we're staring at is not exactly how do I want to put this? Not exactly a desirable situation. So in the end, what I'm going to be doing, and what I think a lot of other people are going to be doing, is refraining from ordering products from Newegg until the situation is resolved. I'm not saying I buy a boatload of stuff from Newegg each year. I generally buy one or two things. But this time around, that might not be the case. And long story short, I'd rather not deal with retailers or manufacturers who are trying to cause me problems that are really theirs. I'm also noting this out because my current situation with the power supply, ironically also discovered by Gamers Nexus, if getting the refund or exchange promised by a company becomes a massive chore, I'm going to take it as a sign that they really don't want to deal with it. And that was yet another incident of a company not taking responsibility for their actions. And one of my one of my values is take accountability. If you did something, oh well, learn from your mistake, accept the fact that you made a mistake, and do what you can to fix it. Shoveling it under the carpet is not how you properly fix it. And this incident will need to be resolved. And by resolved, I mean Newegg has to sit down, figure out what's going on, say, here's what's happened, here's what we need to do. And personally, I think every other company should be taking lessons from this. Because if you decide that you want to cause some consumers a problem which in the short term gets you money, the truth always reveals itself. And once that happens, that short-term loss that you would have taken now just got kicked down the road, and a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't have had a problem with you now have a problem with you, and subsequently will decide not to do business with you. So those are my personal thoughts on the whole Newegg situation. If you do buy computer components, for the moment being, I'd recommend not getting them from Newegg until they figure out what's going on here. As much as I love dealing with Newegg, this is not not great. And what I will say is that personally, I have not had a bad experience with B&H Photo Video. They're located out of New York City, but do online sales to basically anywhere in the country and to places outside of the country. And I can say right now, I have not had any issues with B&H. So they will definitely be getting some of my business in the future. But speaking of business, I think it's time to talk about tapping to pay with iPhone. In, I guess, seemingly obvious move to rival Square, Apple will be updating or creating a software update that will permit iPhones to accept contactless payments without any additional hardware required. So right now, I'm sure many of us have gone into a small business or out to a farmer's market, and whoever's doing the business there happens to use Square. We've all seen it before. We've received e-receipts from them where you simply use your payment solution or use your card or whatever to pay a retailer on site. Now, Apple's going to be making it so that you don't need the extra hardware, the extra card reader, to be able to accept payment solutions on the go. You only need your iPhone. Now, the benefit and problem with this is that because there is no additional hardware required, and because an iPhone does not have either a magstripe reader or a, what's the name for it? Magstripe reader or a chip reader, it can only accept contactless payments. And to clear up any possible misunderstanding, contactless payments are when you have a contactless debit or credit card, which will feature 4 curved lines which sort of look like a Wi-Fi symbol. So that means that if you see that symbol on your card, it is contactless enabled. You can use Apple Pay, or you can use other digital wallets. So Apple Pay and digital wallets basically allow you to utilize your phone or your smartwatch to be, or other wearable, to be able to pay without physically having your card present. So, pluses and minuses on that. I guess one of the biggest pros is that for a small business, you don't need to pay for additional hardware. So let's say you're a small enough business that you have to keep an eye on every dollar coming in and going out, but you're a large enough business that you have an event where you have 4 people sort of doing checkout. When you have that there, the Square Reader, I think, costs $35. That means to have 4 people running that, you need 4 devices, plus you need, You need 4 devices plus 4 readers. Because, for the record, if you only accept magstripe payments, you are subject to credit card liability or credit debit liability, which means that if someone is using a fraudulent card and you don't accept the chips, you are not going to, or you as the small business or whatever service or nonprofit, etc., be on the hook for the fraudulent payment. The other thing is doing a little bit of research. MasterCard has announced that they will be slowly removing support for magstrip. What this means is that I believe in 2024, they will not be requiring businesses or banks, I should say, they'll not be requiring banks to have the magnetic strip on the card. And in 2033, which is over a decade down the road, they will not be allowing mag strips on the back of their card. And I can say right now, if one of the world's biggest card issuers is going to be doing this, the rest will follow. So what this means for payments getting smarter, faster, and more secure, I can definitely get behind, because my personal thoughts on it are having a card that has 3 ways of payments. Never really do I use the mag strip on the card. There are very few and rare incidents where that ends up being the payment or method of conveying card details that I use. However, the places that do use that should definitely be taking note of this. I had to go digging for it. But that means right now it is 2022. 2024 is only a couple years down the road. So cards that are issued in 2024 not having a mag strip create what you call the forced innovation and upgrading effect. So that means as a business, you really should be accepting the latest and the greatest in secure payment technologies, so that if someone walks in, they would like to support your business, but they can't pay you. That means, well, you don't get the person's business that day because you can't accept their method of payment. So the other, I guess, elephant in the room is the fact that, what's the name for it? Apple is sort of trying to rival Square here. And my personal feelings on it are that they will and will not actually rival Square, because part of Square has 2 sets of business, right? First, you have the fact that you are able to accept payments out and about and on the go. But the other detail to take into consideration is that, what's the name for it? Some businesses use Square as an easy-to-use payment solution, which means you have your receipt printer, your cash drawer, and all the other fun stuff that you already need to have to operate your business. So what I think this move by Apple is going to do is make it so that if you're, let's say, at a farmer's market, someone might be accepting contactless payments on their iPhone. If you go to a farm that has different products to choose from, they might be doing something a little bit different where, I mean, imagine from a cashier point of view, if you want to have you're entering in item codes and other fun stuff, the bigger the screen, the better. You don't want to be entering that in on an iPhone all the time. And spoiler alert, Apple's iPads do not have NFC, or at least if they do, they don't talk about it. So if I walked into a store with my iPad, I cannot use the iPad to pay for my goods. So why that is the case, I'm not entirely sure, but that is the situation. So for people who do have, or people who have iPads as their primary business solution, this can't cause them problems. The only thing that this can do is give them an easier way to accept payments on the go. So my favorite example is that farmer's market. The other food for thought, which I was alluding to earlier, is that this means that some banks and consumers are going to have to modernize their way of thinking and way of doing. And I say that for two reasons. First, I know that there are some banks that are currently issuing cards that do not support contactless. And what this is going to mean is, what this is really going to sort of instigate as a change is that if someone has a card, only supports does not support contactless, and they go to a place, like let's say just for the sake of variety, let's say they go to a food truck on the corner that's only accepting contactless payments. All of a sudden, that person cannot support that business even if they want to, and that business cannot receive support from that person, or cannot exchange goods and services to that person. And the other food for thought is on the consumer side. And this comes down to more of a generational thing. So younger generations really, truly prefer using contactless types of payment. And I can say that I'm probably one of the people who enjoys being able to pay contactlessly. Because from my perspective, it means that my card is outside of my wallet for a minimal amount of time, which means that anything that could happen is minimized by the fact that if you keep a card in a, wirelessly blocking sheath, it means that there's a grand total of 2 seconds that you can use to steal my card information, which is rather difficult. So, altogether, I think that this move by Apple is maybe going to offer businesses a little bit more choice and flexibility in what they do. Just imagine going to a farmer's market and realizing you forgot your Square reader, but you have the ability to accept payments without that reader, then you're not completely out of luck. But at the same time, I think it is going to create that domino effect that sort of influences how cards are being handled and accepted in the future. Because they've come a long way from needing to imprint to where the mag stripe was a revolution, and then to, or at least in the US, just in the past decade, having the chips appear on every single card with the liability shift. And now you have the contactless revolution going on and changes in card designs. So in the old days, you used to have, because of the way of cards being read, you'd have raised print numbers on the front of the card. And that's still present on some cards, but many people are shifting away from that. If you're, if you have problems seeing, that can be a very useful thing, but for everyone else, personally, I prefer the modern way of doing cards where the entire front of the card contains the logos that it needs, and all the card information is on the back, which means that when you pull your card out to pay, people can't even see. Cameras in a store can't see what your card details are. They only get dealt with by the secure terminal. And I think this step from Apple will help make sure that the future of payments is fully embraced by more and more retailers. And that's something I'm really looking forward to. Now, something you could do with payments is pay for a new Samsung phone. So Samsung has unveiled the latest Samsung Galaxy S22, S22 Plus, and S22 Ultra. So the basic differences are the size of the screens that they use and the resolutions. So the Galaxy S22 starts at $799, features a 6.1-inch screen with 1080 by 2340 resolution. And S22 Plus starts at $999 and features a 6.6-inch screen with 1080 by 2340 resolution, same resolution as the base S22. Lastly, the Galaxy S22 Ultra features a 6.8-inch screen with the 1440 by 3088 resolution and a built-in S Pen, making it more like the Note series. So Samsung, congratulations on combining the Galaxy and Note series together. And the price on that starts at $1,199. So bonus points to Samsung. All three of the new phones feature 120 Hz refresh for smoother gaming and scrolling, something that is not present on the base level iPhone 13. And I think it supports facial recognition, IP68 water and dust protection, and they do happen to support our favorite wireless charging. They've also shifted the way the phones are constructed, so instead of a plastic back, they will feature a Gorilla Glass type back. So, that being said, also on the list of specs, all the phones have 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is pretty impressive. And if you want the S22 Ultra, can be upgraded to 12 gigabytes for an additional charge. And you can get storage in either 128 or 256 gig storage options, with the Ultra model being able to be upgraded to 1 terabyte, obviously for an additional charge. So pre-orders are available now, and my thoughts on it are that I think it's an impressive new device. Whether or not it can compete, or how well it can compete with Apple, I think is going to deal with its longevity. So the main going for Apple's phones right now is the fact that you can get it and it will last you a long time. And it will hold on to a lot of its value. So with this model, I think Samsung is setting themselves up to be able to deal with their phones, or to be able for a user to have one of their phones and be able to use it for a lot longer, which personally I like a lot. So, all that being said, I know there are some people who are always going to go iPhone. There are some people who are always going to go Android. I think these ones are available in a few different colors. So color preference is down to whoever's using it. And all that being said, I think it's an interesting development, and I can't wait to see reviews on these brand new phones. So, speaking of phones, a lot of phones have an app store on them, and the Senate is creating a bill that is targeting anti-competitive actions on these app stores. So this bill will apply to stores that have more than 50 million United States users, which are considered for the purposes of the bill a covered company. And covered companies are prohibited in this bill from requiring developers to use a specific in-app payment system as a condition of access or use. They also cannot require pricing to be equal or more favorable on its app store. And last but not least, they can't punish developers for using or offering different pricing terms for another payment system or app store. So what gets interesting about this is that it means it's going after the Apple versus Epic trial, where Epic was not at all thrilled, and a lot of other people are not thrilled, that all of the app stores have 30% commissions to them. And Apple and Google, the owners of iOS and Android respectively, both of their CEOs were lobbying against this bill, and for good reason. Because if this bill does come out, it is going to take away the sort of monopoly that they have on payment solutions. And my thinking on it is that at this point in time, it's too late. Almost everyone supports this, because I've said it in previous episodes, but I will say it again. The 30% dates back to a time when the company had to house and store and ship and otherwise handle physical disks and packaging, stuff that took up a lot of physical space. It's a lot cheaper for the companies to utilize digital solutions, to the point where 30% is way overkill. And the fact that they're saying, hey, don't pass this bill now, they had their chance to make it not exist by lowering these rates earlier on. Yes, it would come at a cost to their bottom line, but now it's going to really force the companies to be a lot more competitive with their payment rates. So if someone says, hey, use this payment solution and you'll get a 5% commission, and you only have to pay 5% on it, a lot of developers are going to say, hey, 5% or 30%, which I'll take the extra percentage points, no problem. So I guess my thinking is down to Apple and Google. Sorry, you did have your chance. It's unfortunate that it's had to come down to this, but if you have a chance to fix something in-house, you can either fix it in-house, or you cannot fix it, get a lot of people mad at you for it, and then get it fixed externally. So this is the same sort of thing that has to happen to keep utility rates in check. So still can't hold a candle to a lot of things. So my fingers are crossed right now that this bill does pass, because I support developers on the fact that they should not. Personally, it comes down to, you guys did have your chance to fix the problem, make sure that it didn't have to come down to this. But continuously charging the rate for dealing with disks for dealing with ones and zeros that take up maybe $1 worth of space on there for you, and getting way more than that. You have the chance to, my thoughts on this are, think about it for the future. When you have the chance to fix something, maybe it does sometimes come at a cost to the bottom line, but sometimes, I think that's part of the theme on the episode, sometimes a short-term loss is worth a small, I guess not short-term loss, a small long-term loss is better than a short-term gain in maintaining high profitability until people get mad enough that they turn it into a long-term large loss for you. Because I can tell you right now, I think if they had reduced it down to, let's say, 10%, yeah, it would have removed 2/3 of the revenue coming from this particular stream, but people would have been happier, not necessarily suing you in court as the Epic versus Apple case was. And the other problem that it could have resolved is the fact that this needing to be legislation, which means that if someone's going to offer, like I said, 5% commission, or no one in their right mind is going to say, I'll take Apple's 30%, but thank you. No, they're going to choose the 5%, which means that instead of getting 1/3 of what you originally got, you're now getting 0% of what you initially got. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future with this, but if this bill passes, this will be the future that we get to look forward to. Last but not least on today's episode, I wanted to mention about IRS's Facial Recognition program. So the IRS had been working on a program that would require facial recognition to log into their online services. However, after a combination of pushback and protest and all the other fun stuff that goes along with that, the IRS is going to be halting that program for the future. Personally, I'm very glad about that, because I do not think you should be needing to use facial recognition to log into the IRS. Second, the IRS can do enough damage to someone and has enough information on them. They don't need more, in my opinion. And last part is that if you're not doing it right, facial recognition is not worth it, or is not secure. If you take a look at Windows Hello requirements, they don't just say, oh, you have a webcam, sure, accept facial recognition. There were some third-party services that sort of did that for you on some older devices. But for Windows Hello, there are requirements that sort of make it so that the device can't as easily be fooled. So if you just use facial recognition that works on a webcam, or any average webcam, it's not going to be secure. The computer in front of me with my notes on it has facial recognition support, but that's because it has 2 cameras. One camera is your normal sort of webcam. The other camera is an IR camera, because the IR camera can recognize whether you're using whether that's an actual person there, because certain parts of the face react differently to IR light than a printed photo do. Using that and what it sees on the other camera to determine that that is actually a person who is supposed to be unlocking the computer. So, personally, I'm really glad that this got halted, and I really hope it stays halted. Whether or not it will is a different question, but there's no good way for it to really be done. And that also means that anyone who wanted to use the service, but let's say didn't have access to use whatever hardware is necessary to truly authenticate the person there, let's just say you would have made it more difficult to utilize a government service that you are forced to utilize, lest you be thrown into jail and have every single one of your possessions removed from your possession. So, bottom line, if you're requiring people to use a service, try to make it as convenient as possible, and remember that if you do make it inconvenient or inaccessible, you can't punish people for not using it. Anyway, that's going to do it for today. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit different. Blew off some tech steam today. My Parti for the week is just if you're going to do something, take a look, learn the long-term benefits and risks that you're taking, and recognize that a short-term gain coming at the cost of a long-term loss is not necessarily worthwhile. So, if you did enjoy this podcast episode, please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And you can go to anchor.fm/weeklyparti, where you can listen to any previous episode of the podcast, as well as interacting with voice messages. Plus, you can support the podcast, which really helps us out a lot. If you want, and you're using Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. Helps out a lot. And if you want to see me get worked up about some of these issues, you can always watch that action on YouTube. So, with all of that being said, I think it's been an interesting week. I'm hoping that next week we can see a little bit of a different outlook on things. And with all that being said, take care. Release date happens to be Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day. Hope you loved this episode, and I love the fact that you're listening to it still. Take care, and roll the outro.